you're an orchestrator, basically.
Yeah.
Good.
Pontificator.
Well, good. Well, welcome everybody. This is the B2B Go-to-Market show with the legendary, the one and only Greg Tapper. How you doing today, Greg?
I'm doing awesome, David. Thank you. Thanks as always for having me. It's a great show to be on. You are the Jay Leno, the Jimmy Fallon of LinkedIn podcasts.
And I want to thank the legions of people that are here in the studio today watching, and the live group at home. Last time I checked, we were breaking LinkedIn actually with the number of people who were tuning in.
I want to thank you for the great service back in the green room too, with the coffee that I got. You can't see it with my back. I got coffee. I got everything I need. The support services in the green room were great.
Love it, man. Well, thanks. And yesterday we had coffee in Menlo Park, which was amazing. Yep. And it was so funny. It was two founders both trying to pitch each other the whole time. Which I love it, man. I think we made a lot of progress there.
Yes. ABS, always be selling. I think that's how it goes.
But I think you won though, because you got a way better deal out of it than me. But
AI is like, it's tough to beat AI. Like, who's going to argue with that? I mean, the internet's been done. Yeah. I'm very bullish on AI, as you can tell.
We're running a poll right now, and I'm running a poll on LinkedIn, and you inspired me to ask the question. If you had a version of Jarvis, that was available to you right now, would you take it? And I think we've gotten like almost 100 votes, and it's predominantly like 80% yes.
Cool. Do they want the suit too? Because we can't build in the suit yet. I want the suit.
Well, I couldn't remember. The other one was the glasses that Spider-Man had in the movie, and that one's called Edith. Yeah, Edith is even cooler than Jarvis. So, yeah.
Edith sounds smarter. Jarvis sounds like kind of like a helper. He sounds almost like a butler. Edith sounds smart. She sounds like a bookworm.
Yeah, she does. So predominantly, people would want something like that. I mean, if they just a snap decision from a tiny, control group. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the applications for AI in sales. But I got a couple of questions for you before we start. We're talking go-to-market, B2B go-to-market with an expert, ex-McKinsey, ex-Topo, now starting Pattern AI. I want to get your initial thoughts on Elon Musk and what's going on over at Twitter. From your perspective.
Okay, we're doing open here. Okay, we're doing an open question, just like what are my thoughts about
totally
Elon
open.
Musk? Okay,
totally
setting
open.
me up a little bit here. Okay,
but from your perspective and what you've seen and what you know about it, looking at it from, you've been an employee for a long time, and now you're starting a company as a founder of a company. What are your thoughts on what he's doing and how he's running the company?
So a couple thoughts on Elon himself, just kind of set some context, which is important, and then how he's doing, maybe kind of as a benchmark for leadership and CEOs and people like that. So I think Elon has demonstrated that he's quite a big thinker and visionary, and somebody who they say will just run through brick walls to get things done. I mean, he's like he wants to fly to Mars. He's built this amazing electric company, really, not just electric cars, but the cars what we typically see, and just satellites and the whole thing. And to be that kind of person, you need to be a free thinker. You need to be an independent thinker. You cannot play by other people's rules in order to do really big, exciting things, right? Because generally speaking, rules are by definition meant to limit us. And so he doesn't play by standard rules. I don't think he's unethical, so I don't mean that. I just mean he doesn't play by the standard rules of how we do business, which is, okay, everybody, we're going to make, work at home. We're going to try to do 3-2. We're going to do 80-20, what everybody's, the BTO now is, all the buzzwords coming around about that. And his approach is really just, you just come in with an axe and just kind of, put it down on the desk and say, this is how we're going to do things. And I think when it comes to Twitter, so you need to be a free thinker. He's definitely a free thinker. He's a big thinker, and that's just kind of his personality. Now let's go into like the tactical kind of views of like, how a CEO typically would, and a leader more specifically, typically would behave, and then, how's he kind of tracking against that. So, I'm quite sure that over at Twitter, there are a lot of people working from home who are for sure WFH right now. And the bosses are like, hey, come on. This is like back in Yahoo when they, I'm friends with some of the senior executives over there. I'm like, they came in, they made all these people come home. There were people on the payroll that people didn't even know were working at Yahoo. And they literally had another job at ABC company, and they were like on the Yahoo payroll. And it's unfortunate, but people take advantage of that. But I'm pretty sure, I'm 100% certain that there are people at Twitter who suddenly were just like hiding in a corner, making a whole bunch of money well into the six figures, not doing a whole lot, if anything at all. And suddenly somebody comes in and says, wait a minute, this is bull. Okay, we're going to stop that. And everybody's going to come back to the office, and we're going to be productive and do that kind of stuff. And for those people, it's very jarring and it's very disruptive. And I think that is, they have a right to sort of be upset about that. But on the other hand, he has a right to say, hey, come on, let's get real here, right? Now, the second part of that is typically you might do it with a little bit more of a diplomatic hand and tell people, start with the why, why this matters. And I think he's kind of said that, but it's been much more kind of the heavy-handed, this is going to happen, no questions asked, you need permission from me, and all that kind of stuff, instead of, hey, okay, let's talk about why we need to be in office. And kind of the more, statesman-like, CEOs and so on, Tim Cook or people like that, he comes to mind because they're kind of battling that over at Apple. It's kind of like, look, collaboration happens, internally in teams. I personally think that relationships are built better there. I think people talk too much. I think we over-index on collaboration, and these water cooler, these kind of like, these light bulb moments where the lightning strikes and two people at the water cooler come up with like the next big, Chrome browser. That doesn't happen quite as much as these CEOs and executives like us to believe. That's actually not, in my view, why this BTO and why back to office really matters. By the way, our company is remote entirely, not just remote first. You can go work at WeWork, you can go work, whatever. But if you want to work at home, you can. We just hire good people and say, here's where we're going, and go execute on that, right? But the real thing, and what I would coach anybody who, especially the younger generation, who, if you're in your like early 20s, especially, and this is kind of like your first exposure to the work world, is build relationships. I mean, there's one thing that and I know, like I can, I always say to people, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, it's actually, it's a point of kind of, great pride and joy. I'm probably 2 phone calls away from most anybody in the Valley, right? I have an amazing network of deep personal relationships that can connect me with anybody through anybody else. And I'm 1 phone call away from, a great majority of, people in the Valley here who are senior and, high people up here and on the status poll here in the Valley here. Why? Because I build relationships. Like you and I, we went and had coffee. Are people having coffee? Are they doing that over Twitter? Well, maybe not, but you can if you go back to the office, and people aren't doing that. So big thinker, probably a little heavy-handed, but the idea is right. Like if you want to build a great company, build relationships, have ideas flowing, work with people, collaborate, and that's really possible when you go back to the office.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the why behind the decisions that he's making and the way that he's communicating that. I think that's something that's really important, in that if people understood how dire the situation was that he walked into, then they would have a better understanding about the moves that he's making and why he's suddenly holding everyone accountable and stuff like that. But it seems like he did it in a way where it was all about him and his reputation versus laying out the context of, hey, if we don't do this, we're gonna die basically as a company. I mean, it's
they might die anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, Twitter. So let me talk to you a little bit more briefly about my thoughts on Twitter for a second here. Twitter provides, as as Elon and others would say, a really important kind of town square environment for people to meet. However, the product hasn't really evolved in a decade, right? It's up there with some of these other tech companies that are big, but their product looks the same. And I don't think, secondly, that there should be one town square. I think, can there be other places that people meet? And we'll almost certainly see startups, and entrepreneurs have, generally good knack for like, well, there's a big inefficiency there. And I think if I weren't doing what I'm doing, I would look very seriously at going after Twitter and just taking them down. Because I think Twitter is, to me, I don't like Twitter generally as a platform. I don't find I get as much value out of it. I get more engagement on LinkedIn, for example. But if you could kind of bring Twitter and LinkedIn closer together, make that more of an experience to be better. But I think Twitter in its current state, whether it's Elon or somebody else, needs to evolve. I think it's amazing that you can hear from, dictators and, in hostile nations who can sit there on this public platform and talk, to everybody and have their point of view heard. And I think that's valuable, right? Sometimes it's not. But it needs to be a better product for that kind of conversations to happen. It needs to be cleaned up so that we get rid of a lot of the garbage there, the bots and all these other things, and the stuff that Elon is kind of attuned to. It's a valuable product, but it's an old, outdated product that probably needs to either disrupt itself or be disrupted by some enterprising entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, maybe that's one of the things that he's doing. And the other quick thing is that there was all these dire warnings that if you laid off, 80% of the company or whatever, that the whole thing would just implode and it just wouldn't work anymore. And you remember back in the day, it used to crash all the time. They had actually the fail whale. Do you remember that? This is like
my friend Mike Abbott, who was VP of engineering there early on, was the guy who kind of created that and kind of helped save Twitter from completely crashing. He's over at Apple now. But,
I mean, and
I remember it.
What ended up happening was that it still works. It looks the same as a user. Like to your point, maybe too much of the same. It's been that way for the last 10 years. But I think that a lot of, and you've probably seen this, but a lot of CEOs out there are saying, wait a minute, like they just laid off 80% of the company, and it still works fine. It's the same basically.
Don't get me started on that. But I do have perspectives on that.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, and we were talking yesterday about the layoffs that are happening, and it's almost like a self-perpetuating machine, in that you see these big companies laying people off, and they're able to drive these efficiencies, and so that everybody wants to do it. It's like a herd mentality, and next thing you know, we're potentially in a recession. So.
Yeah. Well, I've learned this over the, I think you said you've been in 3 of these cycles before. We've had a few of them, probably more than that. But like the big one was 2001. You and I both remember that. I was pretty early in my career back then. But anyway, 2001, 2008, and then this. And people say, oh, this is bigger than 2008. I don't know what's happening. I do know that a lot of smart people are saying, we kind of hear both. There's, something bad's coming. There's a storm brewing. There's that. And there's some people saying, we could come in for a soft landing and things can be okay, right? We don't know. 2008, if anybody remembers that, if anybody who's kind of age here was kind of in the workforce and had was gainfully employed, we were worried that the entire financial system was going to collapse, that 2008 was far worse than anything we're seeing. This is like, well, it could be a recession. I'm not sure. It could be, I don't know, soft landing, but like nobody in 2008 was saying there's going to be a soft landing. And that's just like, the train hit, ran off the tracks, and it was literally a train wreck. And like senior financial bankers in place were saying, go to your bank and start withdrawing cash from the bank in case banks collapse, you'd have some money. Like nobody's going to the bank now and secretly withdrawing cash, in case the system collapses. This is not like that. So just to give some perspective, I was there in 2008, and it doesn't even feel like 2001. 2001, like you could drive down the 101, you could drive 120 up the 101 and not even see another car. Like it just completely just ghost town. If you remember that back in the day, it was like, it took you an hour to go 5 miles in like 99. 2001 came, you could drive 120 miles an hour and not even see anybody, right? It was just turning into ghost town. But the people who were smart, stuck around and said, hey, this tech thing's really big. And by the way, tech was really just getting started back in the 90s. It's not like today, it's a mass market industry. But the other point I want to make was a lot of these companies, they can kind of use that doom and gloom perspective to say, well, boy, things are looking bad. Let's get rid of, I don't know, 15,000 people, 11,000 people. Now, if you're a guy like you or me, you're sitting here going, well, geez, that's, can we get them at a reasonable price now? That's not like, $800,000 in free massages and, valet parking. Like, we can't compete against that, right? And they can't.
Yeah.
So they just let all these people go. And then the third thing I want to say about this is interesting. Is not just that they use it as an excuse, but the myth of the stable company, right? This is not Japan of the 1950s or 60s, and you're going to have lifelong employment with Nippon Telegraph and telephone or whatever, right? That it's a myth. And anybody who's out there listening, we get these people who I reach out to people. I'm head of HR too. So I'm always recruiting. I'm like, hey, reach out to people on LinkedIn. Hey, we're doing cool things. Check us out. Even come work with us. I was on a podcast recently about recruiting great people. And, a couple people replied and they said, oh, you're too early. There's too much risk in an early stage startup. I'm going to go work for a big company. And I don't reply because I don't have the bandwidth, but I'm just like, thank you for telling me that, because you're naive. Because, tell that to the 15,000 people at Facebook who are saying Christmas is coming up and they have no job in a market where there could be a big recession. They're not going to get hired in the next 2 to 3 months because people are freezing their hiring. What are those people going to do? I'm not saying I feel bad for them. I'm just saying that hey, you chose to work at a big company versus a high growth startup. We're not net downsizing people. We're net upsizing. We're growing like you are, right?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you go to a startup where you can have impact and grow, and you're not going to get downsized because, somebody's going to use the backdrop of recession to get rid of you? There's a myth out there, and I'd like to dispel that myth to anybody who's naive enough to, to believe what the big corporate titans are telling you about the stable company, so they can benefit themselves with, recruiting.
Well, it's true. I know, and some of the best companies, the biggest success in 5 years start today. During these big, layoff and recessionary periods, there's suddenly all this talent, and some of the best companies are born during these harder time periods. So it'd be interesting to see, in the next 5 years, what comes out of this. And one of the things, that you're working on, and like I mentioned, we ran the poll that, the AI is starting to come to the point where it's crazy how useful and the gains that are being made. It's almost like we're at a tipping point. Hopefully not at the singularity, when the computers can think for us and things like that. But as the application that you found toward, sales and using it to analyze your data, this could be the time right now when AI really breaks out.
Well, what's interesting is when I was an analyst back in, I just posted this, our conversation on LinkedIn here, for anybody who's going to follow along with this. When I was an analyst way back early on, when the PR people come up to me from big tech companies and they'd say, okay, this is the year of video conferencing. This is the year, and this is when I was an analyst way back when doing analyzing Dragon Dictate, which IBM bought, and Dragon Dictate was this little application. You go to Staples and you download the software on your computer and you would dictate with this big headset, right? It was that was dictate. That was 2000,
they're still around,
1998 or something, right?
Yeah,
so they are. Nuance bought them. My friend Paul Ritchie was the CEO over Nuance. Anyway, so everybody would call and they'd be like, okay, we want you to put out, this analyst report saying this is the year of video conferencing. This is the year of voice recognition software, right? And I remember saying to them, and I would always, this is my stock and trade line, was there is no year of ... right? Technology is constantly innovating. So you could say this is a breakout year for AI, and I don't mean to diminish your comment. It is a big breakout. We've had these amazing, developments with these transformer models, from Google over the past, literally just 5 years or so. GPT models that come out here, GPT-3, everybody knows about Dulany. So there's a lot of excitement about this, and they're really pretty incredible. But it's nothing compared to what's going to happen next year and then the year after. And we're really on this logarithmic growth curve in terms of innovation that's going to happen with AI. And anybody, and I tell this to people who interview with us and so on as we do our recruiting, anybody who's who's not like in the last, say, 5 years of their career, but even then, hey, enjoy the last, couple minutes of, of your career wave here. But like anybody who's not thinking about artificial intelligence, because it's real. I mean, you should see the stuff we're working on. Like, look at them like, this is spooky, how powerful this stuff is. But anybody who's not thinking about AI as the backdrop of their career over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years is missing out on one of the most exciting transformational developments in human history, for sure. I mean, this is bigger than, I keep saying on all these podcasts I'm on, wherever, it's bigger than the internet. So it's happening this year. Yes, it's going to happen next year, but it's going to keep, growing logarithmically.
Yeah. And to your point, it's like, Zoom is a perfect example, because there was Web Connect or something. I can't remember what the name of the old one was. We had video conferencing, and it was very clunky, and you had to download all this stuff, and then it crashed.
Yeah.
And then Zoom.
You remember like getting into the meeting rooms and people were like,
it was just
setting up the cameras and things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Zoom came out, and it was like, oh, okay, here's another one of these things, that I mean, nobody's going to want to use that. And then COVID, hit, and suddenly, Zoom hockey sticked out of the park or whatever. I don't mix metaphors, but
you got your analogies, right? Yeah.
I guess something like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that it was a convergence of things that you can't really, it's not like an analyst could sit down and write a report that 2020 is going to be the year of video conferencing if they didn't know that there was going to be COVID and Zoom's technology was ready and everybody was ready to do that, So it should be interesting. I think when you think about AI, especially because we're talking go-to-market, right? So how one of the comments in the poll that I made was, hey, it was one of the software vendors came on and said, hey, we're doing this already. And I looked at what they were doing, and it was basically you would have sort of a wingman on a sales call with you who was AI powered and giving you advice as you're talking to a customer. And I mean, stuff like that, that's like amazing if it works correctly. Right? You don't want them giving you bad advice.
I'll have to go to the comments and go see who that company is. I know most of the companies. I might even know the people doing that.
And
there's a little bit of an overpromise in there. Well, I just want to say that there's a little bit of it's a great idea. I can just say that problem is actually a little beyond our reach right now as a market. I mean, if this company, I know pretty much all these companies in the space, but like they're probably in the right path. They're certainly a competitor to us in that sort of sense. We're doing actually different things than that, but they're close enough where I'd say probably competitor. But they'll probably they're either they're experienced entrepreneurs who are just telling a smoke and mirror story, or they're young entrepreneurs who don't have the context of history to say this is actually going to be 2 to 3 innovations away in the market, like big complex innovations, from being able to do that. But that's the right idea. I mean, at the end of the day, we probably all will have a Jarvis. We'll all have an Edith. I'd have to go check back and see what Edith is. We will have self-driving cars. But like, as you look at Elon Musk, I mean, the Teslas, I don't have a Tesla, but all my friends do. But like, a Tesla's like, it's like, autopilot. It's not autopilot quite yet. It's kind of like cruise control on steroids. But it doesn't like drive you around and and do all these things quite like the promises out there in the market and the media and the press one. It's basically, you can turn it off, you can kind of check your email relatively safely, but we're a few years away from these things happening, right?
Yeah.
But AI as a technology is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think like I can test drive a lot of tools that people are doing and it to support pipeline generation and revenue generation and stuff like that. And not, as you're talking, I think of it, and it's like the promise is always you just sort of set it up, give us your parameters, set it up. Here's who you want to talk to. Press play, and then it's sort of running in the background, thinking for you, and it'll just serve up these ready to deliver sales leads, for example. And so that's
amazing. Like generating content.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. That sounds amazing. But in practice, and this isn't a knock on anybody, but in practice, you get the reports back, and it's like, Johnny's Kitten Hospital in Idaho or something like that. And
I'm from Idaho, so I know Johnny's Kitten Hospital.
Terrible.
I know Johnny. Yeah, it's funny. I literally just looked it up myself. I'm looking at these leads, like these guys. I'm like, that's not our ICP.
Yeah, you still have to have a human being go through and go, okay, these leads are pretty good, but obviously we don't sell to them, or them, and stuff like that. So, there's ways to go. I mean, I think, So in a perfect world, it was like what we were talking about yesterday, in that, you can work together side by side with the AI.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And it's not going to be, 100% perfect, but you're working together as a team to achieve the goal that you're trying to do, versus it's just a plug and play, press a button, and it solves all your problems. That's kind of how it's being marketed.
Let's also look at let's look at a couple market data points here, right? It sounds like we got some competitor on who's like, first of all, astroturfing our podcast, or the podcast that I'm worked so hard to be a guest on here, and he's like spamming the podcast saying, we do that. Classic. But anyway, it's okay. So,
I can't see the comment here.
Yeah, that's okay. But take a look at the market developments here to see just how far we are from innovations. Like these really smart companies, like say Microsoft. Microsoft just cut Cortana, right? And these were smart people, building Cortana. And Cortana came from I forget what the video game was. Was it World of Warcraft? I forget which one it was, where Sergeant, whatever his name was, Master Sergeant, Master Chief, whatever. I'm not a gamer, so I don't remember. But I remember Cortana was like this, AI robot who would be like there to kind of watch your back. And they built that because they're like, hey, I want this, right? And I think everybody wants that. And they're right, but it's just very hard to do. They cut it down. Look at Alexa. I mean, they just cut 10,000 people from Alexa. Alexa is probably one of two of the best, sort of digital assistants out there. The other one being Siri. You could throw in Google Assistant. If you really want to get brave, you can throw in Samsung Bixby, as you and I talked about yesterday. I don't know what happened to Bixby. I think he's gone. But they cut down, they basically just turned off Alexa, right? They're just dialing it way back. So, if you're an entrepreneur, I guess that means that maybe, delivering brown boxes is better than, building, smart voice assistants to turn on the music and tell you the weather, right? So there are some interesting indicators in the market that would suggest that we still have some work to do to bring this stuff to, to prime time.
Yeah. Yep. And that's okay. So wrapping up, when are you going to tell us about the product that's coming out from Pattern?
I can actually neither confirm nor deny the existence of a new product that's coming out.
Okay.
Well, first of all, we have a lot of recent announcements that we announced to our users and to our investors recently. We're constantly innovating as our mandate as a startup. And so we have some very exciting new product developments coming up in the next month or so. We could release them today, but they're just a little bit early for our taste to kind of put out there in the market. And then clearly we have a lot of competitors that are like nipping at our heels here, including joining our podcast and astroturfing us. But hey, whatever. So
what does astroturfing mean?
I don't know. Is that some marketing word where you have people go in there and they just try to pretend like there's somebody they're not, or they're not really technically astroturfing, but you're like, this is a great product. I use it every day. And they're in the reviews and, it's the PR team at some company, right? I'm using that because it's such a great word. Who cares what it means? It's a great word.
There have been, and just in the final minute here, there's been a side topic, but there's been great advancements in AstroTurf since we were kids. I mean, do you remember how bad?
It's amazing.
AstroTurf was a nightmare. It was that really tires. Thin. Yeah, and now it's padded and thick, and you fall on it, it doesn't even hurt. So
there's innovation. Look, there's innovation all over the place. If you want to be an entrepreneur, I think we tend to over-index on software and AI because it's cool. AI is really hard, by the way. It's not easy to build AI applications, and and I'd be happy to talk with anybody who wants to do that, who wants to do it, or invest in it or whatever. It's hard to do. I think we make it generally look a little bit easier because we're pretty good at executing, but it's really hard to build these AI applications and solve specific. There's a million problems to solve out in the world. It'd be great to see people who don't really love software, but they think like they should be in software, to go out and do like other cool things, like solve, like the water problem is a really big problem. If things are getting drier, like you can go down to Lake Mead and they're like finding bodies from like, the Nevada desert, like droughts are happening. How are you going to solve for that? Now they're putting AstroTurf in all these places because Lake Mead is totally dried up. So in Arizona, in places, and in Nevada, they're mandating you have to have AstroTurf. Well, somebody should go solve the water problem, and that means people aren't going to get clean drinking water. There's a lot of big social problems to solve out there that are not quite, as cool as like software. But anyway, are we running out of time already? This goes too fast.
We are. I know it goes by fast, and we'll dive in. I had like 5 more things I wanted to ask you, Greg. But I appreciate you coming on.
My responses are always long, so you gotta have like 2 things, and then
I'll do it. We'll do this again soon.
I look forward to it. Maybe next week. All right. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Greg.